Hello, everybody. This is going to be 14.1 Rise of Aggressive Dictators in Europe, in Asia, all over the place. 14.1 primary sources from Benito Mussolini, the founder of fascism, as many call him. He said, "Fascism is a religion. The 20th century will be known in history as the century of fascism." Mussolini, like many dictators, was wrong about this. So, our objectives, we're going to explain the rise of dictatorships in the Soviet Union, Italy, and Germany, and Japan in the 30s. Summarize acts of aggression by Italy, Germany, and Japan. Analyze the responses of Great Britain, France, and the United States to the aggressive regimes as well. So let's look at peace dissolving post World War One. Many historians think of World War One really beginning right after, or World War Two starting right after World War One, because of how Germany was treated by the victorious countries. They were embarrassed. They had been forced to claim absolute responsibilities for everything that happened in World War One. They were broke. They had to pay huge reparations to the victorious countries. They were financially ruined, spiritually ruined, ruined in a variety of ways. And Italy and Japan, who had actually been on the victorious side of World War One, felt that they didn't get everything that they deserved out of the First World War. So they were a little edgy as well at this point. Many of these nations started to move away from legally represented democracies during the 20s and the 30s. So during this time, people started to turn to dictators, especially when the economy fell flat around the world during the Great Depression. People were like, well, obviously, uh, capitalism doesn't seem to be working. We need to try something else. And so they went to totalitarianism, where one person has absolute control over the entire life of everyone in the nation, be it economic or social, political, cultural, all of the above. In the 20th century, dictators are using terror tactics, fear, paranoia, spies, secret police, all that they can do in order to keep people in line. People living in these states had no individual rights. They had their rights taken away for the greater good, in big air quotes, of the country that they're living in. So, why did people choose to give away their rights? Well, because it gave them a sense of control to give it, there are rules that we can follow, basically. And yes, these rules may one day get us killed, but we do have some semblance of security during this time. Let's look at a few. First, let's look at Russia. Russia was one of the first dictatorships of the 20th century. They ousted the czar, the leader of Russia. They had a second revolution after that, and then Vladimir Lenin became the leader of Russia in 1917. Lenin was not. Many people talk about, like, oh, Stalin was the bad one, Lenin was the good one. Lenin was a dictator as well. He was absolutely a totalitarian. However, he was replaced by Stalin, who really is incomparable in a lot of ways when it comes down to it. He was absolutely ruthless, totally willing to kill whoever needed to be killed in order to stay in power. He killed political opponents. He arrested and executed people without cause, just based on, third-hand hearsay evidence. He set people up in prison camps and saw them starve to death. He was a brutal dictator. He also took a agricultural, giant country and turned it into an industrial powerhouse by the time he was out of office. So here is Joseph Stalin on the right with Vladimir Lenin on the left in 1922. Stalin once allegedly said, "A single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic." So basically, um, people only care about the personal when it's one at a time. Now, Stalin stayed in power through fear and propaganda. He also brainwashed people, got them while they're young, got them while they're little kids, and got them devoted to the cult of Stalin. Italy was another dictatorship that came out of World War One. After the war, Italians were angry they hadn't gotten land out of it. The Depression also hit Italy very hard. There was almost a communist revolution in Italy in the 1920s, and people were saying, well, who's going to stop this communist revolution? And so they turned to a new idea called fascism. Benito Mussolini was the leader of this fascist party. Fascism is a far right belief in restoring order. Um, it made Italy a world power, and fascism in general believes in totalitarianism, a strong belief in nationalism to the point of believing that your ethnicity is better than all the others, that war is good, expanding is good, strength is good. Many Italians were looking for strength and leadership, and a return to pride, and Mussolini offered that, and so they got it from him. Now, fearing a rise of communism, the King of Italy actually handed power to Mussolini in 22, and he became Il Duce, the leader of Italy. So here is Benito Mussolini, who said, "The truth is that men are tired of liberty." Now, very quickly, he consolidated power. He got rid of all political parties other than his own, took over the press, created a secret police to keep tabs on people. He created youth groups just like Stalin did to indoctrinate them, brainwash them, ordered them to report on their friends and on their family anything that they saw out of line. It was considered your moral duty to turn people in. But also to the kids, it was almost like a pride thing, too. Lastly, let's look at Germany and Japan. So after World War I, Germany was in a deep hole economically, and the democracy in their country very soon fell apart. In the 1920s, a new political party called the National Socialist Party, or Nazis, started to rise up. They started to take advantage of German anger towards other countries, fear of the future, national pride and ethnicity. They followed the same totalitarian beliefs as fascist Italy. Eventually, they were run by Adolf Hitler, a failed artist and World War I veteran who had become a politician. So Adolf Hitler once said, "If you tell a lie, if you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed." Hitler rose to power after a failed revolution in Germany called the Beer Hall Putsch, where Hitler and his allies tried to take over a beer hall and it failed. He spent some time in jail. He wrote his autobiography in jail called Mein Kampf, otherwise known as My Struggle. The book helped to set the stage for how he would hold on to power, too. Called the Germans the greatest people on earth. In fact, more than that, he hinted that they had some sort of, you know, ancient supermen in their bloodline in the background. Promised that he would lead Germany to glory, and basically say, I know who the enemy is, too. I know who's at fault. Find a scapegoat and glorify anti Semitism, the hatred of the Jewish people who he had blamed for years for everything that was wrong. And this was not new to Europe during this time period. The Jewish people had been blamed for like things that had been going wrong in secret conspiracies for centuries by this time. But once Hitler took power, he rearmed Germany and started to take away the rights of German Jews within the country. Now, this also impacted Japan as well. A lot of military leaders thought that the best way to get Japan back to the way it was to expand out of Japan and into places like China. So soon the military was running Japan, the emperor sort of being a figurehead, but Hideki Tojo, the prime minister, was the real power of the time. And now in 1931, Japan attacked and occupied Manchuria in northeast China. They were brutal in the suppression of the Chinese. They were willing to kill thousands of people, including 200,000 believed killed in what is called the Massacre of Nanjing in northern China, where just hundreds of thousands of people were killed. So here's the Massacre of Nanjing, just a little bit of it. Now, let's see, we talk a little bit about their expansion during this time. We've already talked a little bit about Japan moving into Manchuria and China, but as these dictatorships are gaining power throughout Europe and Asia, Western Europe and America are not doing very much. The League of Nations, which was set up to sort of stop this stuff from happening, had no military power, so they couldn't really do anything but, shake their fingers at Hitler. Meanwhile, America is staying right directly out of this conflict that's going on that seems to be building up. We were passing neutrality treaties that were keeping us out of it. Now, basically, the League of Nations could point and, like I said, say, stop it, but they couldn't force them to. So after Hitler built a giant army during this time period against the rules of the League of Nations, but he didn't care. He started to use it. He started to say that Germans required what he called Lebensraum, or living space. And so he started to take over other places. So we see he took over the Saar Valley. He took over the Rhineland during the 1930s. Meanwhile, his fascist partner in crime, Benito Mussolini, conquered Ethiopia and Africa. Both of these guys are also supporting a fascist leader in Spain in the Spanish Civil War named Francisco Franco, who was trying to beat the communists. Meanwhile, other free nations are not doing much of anything. So here's Franco, who said, "I'm responsible only to God and history." Now, how did we stay out of it? England and France were looking to keep the peace, so they said, all right, we will let Hitler take the Saar Valley. We'll let him take the Rhineland. Later on, we will let him take Austria, as long as he promises not to take anything else. Then he took part of Czechoslovakia. Well, as long as he only takes that part. This is called appeasement. Give the bully what they want and hope that they'll stop, basically. And this is partially based on the fact that World War I was awful and wasn't that far in the past. Some people thought that fascism was the better evil compared to communism, and others are worried that the U.S. was staying out of all this too, and that was not giving them a lot of hope that they would be able to defeat these fascist nations. So here's a political cartoon with the appeaser, the guy in the middle there, holding lollipops, and all these fascist countries around him, and the caption reading, "Remember, only one more lollipop, then you all go home," as if that will actually stop them. And this is by Dr. Seuss, of all people. So in the 1930s, Roosevelt is much more interested in ending the Depression and trade. He was trading with South America and Latin America at that time. We were practicing what is known as isolationism, which we did right before World War I as well. If it's on the other side of the world, it's not our problem. Hitler saw the lack of movement by other countries as an invitation and said, well, if they're not going to stop me, I'm going to keep going. And so he took over Austria in what is known as the Anschluss, the joining. He took over the Sudetenland in what was back then Czechoslovakia. So here is just some of the land taken by Germany pre-World War II. And in response to all this, England and France kept saying, stop it, okay, you can have that one, but no more after that, but that one, but no more after that, over and over again. And so the British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, signed what was called the Munich Pact, where basically Hitler swore that he would not invade anywhere else, and in exchange, England and France would not invade him or attack him. And that lasted for about a year until World War II began in earnest. So this is Neville Chamberlain, who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain before Winston Churchill, and he said, "This is the second time in our history that there has come back from Germany to Downing Street peace with honor. I believe it is peace in our time." He said this in 1938 of September. By September of 39, World War II had began.